Hey guys, this is Angel and you're watching my latest video in a mental health series that I've been doing on my channel. I actually haven't made a video in quite a while for this particular series on my channel. And I mainly talk about, I mainly discuss ways that bipolar affects my life, and I wanted to actually start talking to other people about bipolar and how it affects their lives as well. And I have a friend of mine who is in my support group that I've met, and we've become friends. And I wanted to include her her experience with bipolar, and so I got a chance to sit down with her and sort of do a somewhat interview. Her name is Meagen, and the interview is a little bit long, but if you're interested in mental health, if you're interested in people's journeys dealing with mental health, or if you're someone who suffers from a mental illness and you want to feel a connection with others that deal with it, and just sort of, see what their experience is like, as to kind of compare it to what you deal with, I guess. When I first got my diagnosis, I was really I was glad to finally get a diagnosis, to find out exactly what was wrong. I knew there was something wrong with me other than depression and anxiety. I just didn't exactly know what it was. And so when I finally got my diagnosis, it was kind of like this big relief that I finally had a name for what it was. And so when I got home, I had this, I finally had this word or this diagnosis. And so what I wanted to do is get as much information as I could. And I went to YouTube and looked up videos on bipolar, and I found some, but I didn't find a ton. And so that's why I really feel like I want to make these videos. And hopefully I will be able to make more of these as time goes on, and be able to do some more interviews with people who suffer from this, and maybe even from people who suffer from other mental illness other than bipolar. But anyway, let's get into the interview with Meagen, and hopefully again this will help someone who either suffers from mental illness, someone who cares for someone with mental illness, or people just in general who are interested in finding out more about bipolar. And so with that, we'll go into the interview. All right. Okay, so Meagen, let's talk about how did your mental health journey start? What was that like for you?
I think that my bipolar started the spring of my sophomore year in high school. I had a bad depression that lasted for a few months. I, of course, had no idea what was going on. I thought it was happening for other reasons, which actually is a theme, a huge theme through this whole journey. Is I kept thinking that these episodes, these depressions were happening for other reasons, but it was actually the bipolar. So that was my sophomore year, and then my junior year in the fall, I had another really bad depressive episode, and I would end up crying every night to my parents. I don't cry in front of people, so it was really difficult for me, and I thought it was because we had just moved. My dad was in the military, so we moved every year. And I thought it was because of the recent move, so I ended up deciding to drop out of high school and finish online. And that I ended up getting accepted early to college, so I actually went off to college the spring after my junior year. And that fall was when it got really bad. Mm-hmm. And by the end of the semester, I was making plans for suicide, and I realized there is something not right here. So I took myself to the university counseling center, and that's where I got my first diagnosis of major depression, and started seeing a therapist. And then a few months later started taking medication. So that's when it officially started, I guess.
And what medication did they initially put you on? Was it just depression, or did you get an anxiety diagnosis along with that, or at this point just depression?
So at this point, it was just a depression diagnosis. So they put me on antidepressants, which I have now found out can make bipolar much worse.
Right.
Unfortunately, it took me a couple years to realize there was anxiety going on, and then my senior year at college, I finally found the right word. Someone talked about panic disorder, I think, and I realized panic. That is what I feel all the time. That's the word. So that it took a little longer to figure out the anxiety, and then from then on, I always had those two diagnoses up until I found out about bipolar. It was depression and anxiety.
Okay. And then you struggled with those for how many years? Like, how many years was the diagnosis just depression and anxiety, and you were on, did you stay on the same medication, or did they tweak
No.
medications from time to time?
Yeah, always tweaking medications. I tried a lot of medications, but even more combinations of medications where they'll add one, they'll change a dosage, which I think we've all experienced.
Right. It's kind of like a guinea pig.
Yeah.
You feel like a guinea pig because something works for a while and then it doesn't work.
Exactly.
And with most antidepressants, like a lot of people that have taken them will know this, you take them and it literally takes about a month for them to work into your system for you to even know if they're working or not working. So that's like really frustrating.
And then there's a dosage change. So then
Right.
you have to wait another month to see if that's working.
Right.
Then you change the dose again.
And then they always come with like warnings, like some of them can cause, I mean, you're already
make you more suicidal.
right, you're already experiencing, most times with depression, you have those suicidal ideations or things like that. And then certain medications can exacerbate the problem.
Mhm.
So,
And side effects.
exactly.
Sometimes the side effects are so bad it's not even worth staying on the medication.
Right, right.
So medications have been antidepressants. Never
Right.
again.
And then, so you went, how many years did you go on these medications? Like how many years did you have that same diagnosis, I guess?
So it was 7 years. For 7 years I had the wrong diagnoses, and I wasn't getting any better because I had the wrong diagnoses, but nobody figured it out that it was bipolar. So I kept taking antidepressants, I kept taking anti-anxiety meds, we kept changing them, I kept going to therapy to get cognitive behavior therapy, but my depression was too bad, and so it couldn't help. There's a layer of depression when it's so severe that you can't think yourself out of it. You have to get medications that are helping to get you feeling better enough so you can think clearly enough to start working on that. And I never got out of that for 7 years. And so the CBT wasn't working. Nothing was working. I tried everything. I tried journaling. I tried yoga. I tried natural health remedies. I tried the chiropractor. I got massages. All of our...
Right.
We all have lists.
And all along, like with depression, and everybody that suffers from depression have probably had this experience where people say, oh, just think positive thoughts, or just go out and see a funny movie, or
go outside, you need more sunlight.
Right,
Make more friends.
Get out and exercise more. And a lot of people, and we'll talk about this later, but a lot of people think that depression is just being sad.
Yeah.
When it's so many more things. So what are some ways that depression really manifests in you? Like, what are some things that happen to you when you're really depressed? Is it just mental? Is it physical?
So I've talked to a lot of people who have more of the physical, like they start getting sick, they start having headaches, things like that. For me, it's more internal. I have a lot of thoughts of I'm such a burden, and my poor husband has to take care of my toddler all the time. He's a single parent practically because I can't function, and this isn't fair to him. It's not fair to my son. I can't enjoy anything except for reading. I can enjoy reading almost always, even when I'm depressed. So that's one of the things that my therapist says to do even when I'm really depressed. What else? there's, sometimes depression is really devastatingly hopeless and sad, and sometimes it's just nothing. Just sitting on the couch all day,
just
doing
being
nothing.
numb. Yeah, I find that too. Okay, so moving kind of ahead, let's talk about your misdiagnosis and how that sort of happened. Like, how did you go from being depressed and having anxiety and panic to them looking at you and saying, okay, there's more going on here?
So last spring, so that was a little over a year ago, I was hospitalized because I actually took myself to the hospital because I recognized that I'm getting completely out of control. I can't guarantee I'm going to be safe in an hour. I need to go somewhere that can keep me safe. So I went to the hospital, and because part of the problem was my emotions were so out of control, that's why I couldn't predict how I'd be feeling. So they put me on a mood stabilizer. Even though I had my depression and anxiety diagnosis. So that was the first piece of it, but they still didn't think bipolar. So when I got home, I started researching on the internet. Treatment-resistant depression and anxiety. How do people end up getting better? What has worked for that kind of... Because that's what I felt like, because I wasn't getting better for 7 years. I kept getting treatment and trying everything. So I found a website, actually, that I started reading on and kept seeing pieces, and I said, that's me. I always felt like this freak where my depression and anxiety, it didn't quite match everybody else's, and the treatment wasn't working, and I always felt different even within my diagnosis. And I found this website, and I was like, someone understands.
Yeah.
So I took that to my therapist and my psychiatrist and said, I found this, what do you think about this? And the whole point of the website was talking about when bipolar doesn't look like bipolar, but it's enough bipolar that you need treatment for bipolar. So that my therapist, I think I said 3 sentences to him, and he said, that's what it is. We found the answer.
Yeah.
So that's how we finally
came to that conclusion. And from everything that I've read, it's very hard to diagnose bipolar.
Well, especially type 2 bipolar.
Right.
Because sometimes it's so subtle. So I have a chart.
Your charts are amazing to me.
I'm really big on charts. So this shows part of why I was misdiagnosed. So this is my emotional range that I drew. Here is 2007 to 2011. So this is the 4 years I was at college. And you see I never really got above... I was always mildly to severely depressed, which is why CBT wasn't working for me. I was usually down here. Then I got on an antipsychotic, which I felt a little better. I was able to think a little more clearly. Then in 2013, I was pregnant, and actually I had this little burst of 3 mostly good weeks, and I thought to myself, this is what it's like to be normal.
Yeah.
I'm a real
person.
So
this is a neutral mark.
Right.
This is a
neutral.
Mildly depressed, and this is
So
moderate.
this
is
the
mildly.
black line.
Okay.
Mildly. The black line moderately.
Moderately.
The black line severely.
Severely. Okay.
So then in 2015, so this is what happened when I started mood stabilizers. My mood stabilizers stabilized me more around neutral. So it just kind of shifted my mood range up to be around neutral. So we finally started seeing hypomania, where down here I was always depressed, so no one realized these swings were happening within depression. So that's why this website, it was seeing, oh, bipolar that looks different. So, and then last October, I have 2 crashes every year, which I always assumed were, oh, I'm too stressed by my job, I need to quit my job, that's why I'm so depressed. Or school's too overwhelming, so I'm having to drop out again. And I kept thinking that was the problem, but it was just bipolar swings happening.
Yeah. Although, what I have learned with bipolar is there are triggers. For mine in particular, stress is a huge trigger. When my stress level is really, really high, it puts me into an episode. Because I just mentally can't handle it.
That's true. This
Right.
happens though regardless. I have
Right.
this pattern
Sure.
every spring, every fall.
Right.
So last October, here's where I was, and then in January I was back up here. Then I haven't charted this spring yet, but in February, March, and April I had another episode.
Right.
That it's just chemicals, just what my bipolar does.
Right. So with bipolar, you're still going to have these episodes, but you can, like I said, have triggers that add episodes on
for
top
sure.
of that. So there is we talked about this before, but there's a misconception that when you're on your medication, it's a cure.
Don't we wish?
Yeah, and that it's just not true. The medication helps to sort of stabilize you, but you're still going to have those manic, hypomanic, or depressive episodes. So
Yeah, and we all work so hard.
sure.
Medication gets us to a point where we can work really hard.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like sometimes.
Right. And you just never know. It's like Forrest Gump, life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And I feel like that every morning when I wake up, like you never know what mood you're going to get, literally. So, okay. And so you wanted to also to talk about your mania and your depression along with the misdiagnosis.
Mm-hmm. So one of the benefits, so some people get really upset with their diagnosis. Like, I
Right.
can't believe this, I'm not crazy. But for me, I'd been having this depression and anxiety diagnosis all this time. So I got over having a psych diagnosis a few years ago where it was like, well, this is part of who I am. I have to deal with this. And then when I got the bipolar diagnosis, it was just a celebration. We were so happy. I felt so settled, and I haven't really questioned it since then because it fit so much better. And it answered so many questions that I had had all this time. Like, why aren't my medications working? I'm trying all these medications. Why isn't anything I'm doing helping? Why do I keep getting this revolving door of diagnoses? And now I've got 3, now I've had 7. They take some off, they add some more on. This
Right.
doesn't make sense. And
Like you finally had everything fit together. You knew
Right.
what was wrong. There were no more questions.
right.
Yeah. So it's like you weren't happy that you had bipolar, but you were happy that you finally knew
Had answers.
what was, yeah.
And
yeah,
mood
exactly.
stabilizers were helping. I had a happy day.
Right.
Within, I think it was 2 months after I started mood stabilizers, I had one day that was just happy, and I thought to myself, this is what normal people feel like. No wonder they can exercise.
Yeah.
They can move. They can get up off the couch and
They can
do
get out of
something.
bed.
And
They
it's
can
not
leave the
hard.
Yeah.
They can just do it. So with the mood stabilizers helping with the diagnosis, I finally started getting treatment. And some of the pieces, so bipolar, one of the things that made the most sense was these previous diagnoses, like that my hypomania was showing in different ways than the obvious way, which is why I kept getting the wrong diagnosis. Not just was my depression always there for 7 years, but my hypomania is anxiety and panic and insomnia and irritability, which doctors generally know are part of hypomania, but they just don't. A lot of people have misdiagnoses for
Right.
years.
Yeah. Well, because we've talked about this in our group, is like, for me, if I was feeling great, I didn't go to the doctor. I only went when I was feeling depressed. So when I was hypomanic, flying high, my doctor didn't see that. So that's why forever I was just diagnosed with major depression,
So that's why you had
anxiety, and
major-
panic. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why it's really hard for doctors to diagnose, because and a lot of times people think that hypomania/mania, because there is a difference between the two. They think that those hypomania and mania are only like you feel on top of the world,
Right.
you're euphoric, you're like in such a great mood, which that is true sometimes, but sometimes it's like you said, anxiety, irritability, agitation, anger, it's just that kind of like you're on edge all the time.
all the time, right.
Right.
This just, on edge is a good
Yeah.
word for it.
Yeah, like anything could set you off, and
So afraid to do anything, afraid to talk to people, afraid to work too hard, afraid to clean your house just in case it's too
Right.
much.
or it's just hyped up energy that you don't know what to do with. So, people can turn to drugs, they can turn to alcohol, there's sex addiction with people with bipolar, not all the time, but some people turn to that, or spending money, overspending, or gambling, or it's just, they're looking for an outlet to expend that extra energy. They don't know what to do with it. So there are problems. Those are symptoms of bipolar. So okay, so let's talk about something fun and exciting. Let's talk about your first psych ward experience.
Fun and exciting.
Well, they make movies about this. And how many movies have we watched that actually depict a true psych ward experience?
Oh, well, what? Like, can count them on one hand, I'm sure.
Right, not many. I mean, I've tried to watch them to feel validated, but...
And it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
I tried the same thing.
Like, they'll have a little tiny sliver of truth, but then the most of it is, like, over-exaggerated, not true.
Right. Or the zombies. That everyone's over-medicated into zombies. That's not true.
Exactly. Okay.
So my first psych ward, this was almost 4 years after, so this was the end of my senior year at college. So it was about 3.5 years after I got my first diagnosis. And I had this huge, all of a sudden, this light switch it almost felt like that. I finally understand what that metaphor is when people say that. It was like a light switch. I was laying in the basement, I was staying at my aunt and uncle's house, and all of a sudden I was going to kill myself. I knew it. I was going to make a plan. I was going to do it. So I started brainstorming ideas, and I had a list, and I went to see my therapist that week, and at the end of our session I showed the list to him, just kind of to say, am I supposed to be worried about this, I think? And he said, you are going to the psych ward tonight. You call your brother. Either he will drive you or I will call a police escort. So I went to the psych ward, and I was there for a week. I did not want to be there. I just wanted to get out so I could follow through with my plan. But by the end of the week, I was still feeling completely hopeless, like I would never feel better. And some people would say, well, you just need to keep trying and maybe you'll feel better. And I said, what evidence do you have that I will feel better if I keep trying? You have no evidence because my future has never happened. You can't say that. So that was really hard too at the time. But when I got out of the psych ward, the benefit, so we'd done, art therapy, and we made little bracelets, and we could watch, well, we couldn't watch that many movies.
Did you watercoloring?
Puzzles. We colored.
Yeah.
We didn't have watercolors.
I had watercolors and crayons. There were magazines there that literally were probably 5 to 10 years old.
We had a few books. So it was different from anything I'd ever experienced. Right. The no shoelaces.
Exactly.
Which that part they get right in the movies. They take away everything to keep you safe.
Yes.
But that's what I realized while I was at the psych ward this is the purpose of the psych ward, to keep me safe when I can't keep myself safe. It's not like the movies show. It's not to turn people into zombies. It's not just for crazy people. It's for when I can't keep myself safe, this is where I need to go.
Right.
So 3 weeks later, I could feel myself right on that edge of, I don't know if in an hour that switch is going to flip again. And so I called my brother and said, I need you to drive me to the psych ward again, because that's where I need to be to stay safe, because otherwise I will kill myself. So I went, and I was there for 3 weeks because I could not get safe in my head till they put me on that antipsychotic I mentioned on my chart, and all of a sudden it was within 3 days. It was the weirdest feeling.
Yeah.
I realized to myself, my thoughts are actually affecting how I feel.
Yeah.
When I'm depressed, if I tell myself, if I use the CBT and correct my negative thought, it actually reduces my negative feeling, which hadn't happened in years.
Yeah. I'm amazed that you're able to use that CBT. I've been in therapy for 18 years, and they've always worked with me with CBT, but it seems like when I really need that CBT, my brain is so scattered I can't pull it up and utilize it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for you to be able to do that, to me, is like really amazing. But it seems to me that you really are great at like managing your illness, like mentally, because you're able to make these charts and utilize a lot of what they teach you. One of the things that I really benefited from, besides medication switches when I had my stay in the psych ward, was the tools that they taught me.
That's true.
Yeah, and they are so basic tools that most people don't even think of, but for people that deal with mental illness, it literally is like our brains, well, literally our brains are not functioning. So they give you tools like how to structure your day. Get up, take a shower, brush your teeth, get something to eat, like schedule out your day, what you're going to do, and make a calendar for your week.
Even the coloring.
Right.
That is a skill, to be able to sit down, do something you enjoy, or do something that focuses your brain. And
exactly.
that's not even something they officially teach, but that's
Right.
something most of us in the psych ward are, like this actually helps. Look, all these papers and pencils around. Oh, look at that. I'm just going to color.
Yeah. So yeah, there's, I wish they would actually make a movie that truly depicted what goes on in the psych ward.
And I wish people knew it's to keep you safe. That's the purpose, because I had no idea. And if my therapist hadn't sent me, I would have killed myself. Rather, it took me a time before I learned, this is what it's for. And if the movies don't show that.
Exactly. Right. And I'm not saying that there aren't straitjackets involved. I didn't see any though.
I did see people sedated when they got violent.
I did see them sedate. See somebody that was sedated, but it wasn't that they were trying to hurt other people. It was that they were trying to hurt themselves.
This person was trying to hurt other people.
Okay.
So
okay.
They
So those
them.
cases are going to be there. I mean, they are, because there are people out there that are that far out of their mind. They're in psychosis or whatever. So I mean, not to say that that doesn't happen in the psych ward, but most of it is not what a lot of people think that it is. So, yeah. So do you feel comfortable? The medications that you're on now, do you feel like they are working well for you?
So it's, right now. So I still had my spring crash this year, and it lasted for 10 weeks. I wasn't functional. I couldn't predict how I'd feel in 3 hours. And
Right.
so it was really severe, even though I was taking medication. But since then, a month ago, we increased one of my meds, and June has been mostly good. Actually,
That's awesome.
It's been amazing.
And I find my medications this is like the most stable I've been my whole life.
Right, me too.
But I'm still having, like right now I'm isolating. Like I don't want to leave the house for anything. Like a week ago I had I was isolating so much that we literally got down to one roll of toilet paper in the house. And I did not want to go out. And so I called, Walmart now has a service where you can order groceries online and go pick them up, and they'll load them in your car, and that's exactly what I did.
Oh.
So, anyway.
Well, that's problem solving. That's
you're still going to have issues like that, but anyway, so.
So mine right now is lack of motivation.
Right.
You've seen my house since she came to do the video.
And that's not uncommon. That's
not.
very, very common with people that deal with depression, bipolar, any other kind of mental illness. So
there are still symptoms.
Right.
And still on days that are less good, I have a lot of thoughts during social conversations of, they don't really want to talk to me. They're being really tolerant, and I have nothing to offer in this friendship. I am worthless.
Yeah.
And so those still come, but mostly good. And I'll take what I can get.
Right.
I'll take whatever good I can get.
Right. So, okay. Well, gosh, it's been a good conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Because I feel like the more we share, the less the stigma.
Oh, for sure.
And I think we're both probably all about that. So,
Oh yeah.
so.
We've talked about being oversharers.
Right,
We
that-
err on the
yes,
side of
we
saying
do.
too much.
Yeah.
And I definitely do that. But so many people actually around where I live, I've told people sometimes, 'cause my son's in daycare, so I'm surrounded by young moms in student housing, and they say, "Oh, do you have any kids?" And I say, "Yeah, I do. I have a toddler." And they say, "Oh, do you work? Are you a stay-at-home mom?" And I say, "Well, I stay at home during the day, but I have really severe bipolar and I cannot take care of my son. So I spend the day trying to take care of myself, and then and my son's in daycare full time, and then we bring him home in the evening. My husband helps, and I spend the day doing the errands, trying to keep myself well, and then so that in the evening I can be the mother and the wife that I want to be." So I tell people that around where I
Right.
live, and I'm sure it's too much information, but I've been amazed at how many people say, "Oh yeah, well how is that?" Or "I had really bad postpartum depression after both of my kids and it took me months to get over it." Or "I'm on medication for anxiety because I have such a hard time leaving the house." Or it's been amazing
Yeah.
to hear how many people.
Yeah. Well, and there are a lot of people that have mental illness that are not able to work. It's just getting out of bed and getting something to eat, getting dressed, getting showered. All of those things are difficult on most days, not all days, but on a lot of days, those things are really, really difficult. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about mental
No,
illness.
if you haven't felt it, you can't imagine. I
Right.
feel like that's true, that you truly cannot imagine clinical depression unless you have experienced it.
Right.
And people that say snap out of it, it's because they've only experienced enough sadness that they are able to do that.
Right.
They've
They
been
may
able to
have
snap out of
they
it.
may have one bad day in a 2-week period, and so for them, you know, they look at you and you say you have had a bad day or whatever, and they just say, "Oh, okay, well, just
"Oh, that's too bad.
you
Tomorrow
know,
will be better."
yeah, pull up your bootstraps, you'll be fine." So, anyway, yeah, was there anything else you wanted to address? Probably a million things.
Right.
We could probably be here all day.
Yeah, we could. I love
Yeah.
talking about this stuff. Our support group has been,
Amazing.
yes,
Yeah.
amazing. You and another member of our group are the only two adults I know who have bipolar, and it's been so nice to see.
Support
"What did you do
groups,
about
yeah.
this?
Support-
How do you handle this?"
So if you have any kind of mental illness, I think it's really beneficial if you can find a support group.
Even
Absolutely.
online, if there's nothing in person, I think
Yeah,
it's amazing to not feel alone.
yeah. So absolutely. So okay. Well, I
Thanks for
appreciate the
coming over.
conversation. Yeah, thanks, Megan. All right, guys. I hope this video finds you well, and I hope you guys.